Welcome, everyone, to the September 26, 2023 school board meeting. I'm going to ask that everyone silence your cell phones. You're going to want to keep them out for photos, but if everyone can silence them, that would be great. And Mrs. Cutbill is not here tonight, and I'm going to ask our student that we are celebrating tonight, Jolyn Kai, if you will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance at the microphone, please.
Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated.
Thank you very much. And may I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Terrific. Any questions on it? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Student, do you approve tonight's agenda? Aye. Thank you. Board, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 4-0. And I need a motion to approve the minutes of September 12th, 2023.
So moved.
I'll second.
Terrific. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Student?
Aye. Oh, nope.
You are not the student.
Wishful
Thank you.
thinking.
I
Yeah.
wish.
Aye.
Thank you. Board, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That passes 4-0. Staff Board Communication, Dr. Stepanowski.
Madam President, members of the board, excited to share some construction updates. We have a brand-new softball, baseball, kickball field at AE Wright, right outside the windows from here. We've got some more work to do on laser leveling the field itself, but the backstop and the batting cages are, dugouts are installed. The AE Wright staff, Ms. Stein called this one. The AE Wright staff is excited to have this facility and utilize it for their PE classrooms. It is also going to be the future home of an APB, Agora Pony Baseball practice field for pony, Dr. Gleason? Pony baseball?
Mustang.
Mustang baseball. Excited to have moved forward with that. So exciting to be investing in our youth and our youth sports.
And when will that be available for use? That looks great.
Dr. Gleason?
On or before October 1st.
Wow, speedy. Thank you.
Soon. Also, we appreciate our staff, classified and certificated, so we do a couple things each year. We've got the Mr. Softy making the rounds right now. Bottom left is AC Still, top right is Round Meadow Elementary. A lot of fun to be there. If you're ever looking for Steve, Dr. Seifert, sorry, you'll find him potentially at the location. But it is a great chance to visit with staff and catch up and honestly, chit-chat a little bit with them, check in on them and their families, things we can't do in the classroom. So it is a wonderful little break. Sometimes we'll deliver ice cream to staff that can't get off, or we'll go and substitute for them. Steve and I assisted at Yerba Buena and took over for the noon duty aides, and they may have come back to a little bit of chaos. So, you get what you get when you leave Dr. Seifert and I in charge. Next slide. The foundation, as we mentioned before, a terrific carnival event. They've got another event coming up, Poker Night, October 6th at Topanga Social. So we appreciate them, and they have provided us over $100,000 just this year alone. I think they're closing in on $3 million overall contributed appreciation to the foundation. Madam President, want to recognize our guest today, or do you want to continue with staff comm?
We can honor our guest tonight because Mr. Joe Keys has a volleyball game to get to, correct?
My daughter is representing Thousand Oaks, playing at Agora.
Right now. So let's do, but we do want to celebrate our student and the amazing things she accomplished.
When do you want me to start?
I'll kick it off. Mr. Keys is very excited. Mr. Pisto, maybe a little less caffeine for Mr. Keys. Is that possible? Come on up, Principal Flitzville, come on down as well. We are super excited to celebrate this wonderful sophomore next to me, Jolyn Kai. I'm super also proud to share that she's a member of the Superintendent Youth Council, so we appreciate you being there and assisting with us. She's also co-president of Agora's Debate Club and the vice president of the Agora American Sign Language Club. Awesome. Specifically, beyond all that greatness, she's here for two reasons. And let me explain the first. There's an international organization called the John Locke Institute. It is an independent educational organization that works to embolden the best and brightest students to become more academically ambitious and more intellectually adventurous. So Jolyn participated in the philosophy category of the John Locke Institute 2023 Global Essay Competition. She, along with 19 other thousand, submitted her essay. And again, I said it was an international organization. She made it through the first two rounds into the finals and was invited to attend the ceremony at Oxford University. Pretty exciting. So of the 19,000, in just this category alone, she finished within the top 50 or so across the globe. So that's part of the reason she's here. She's also here because, rumor has it, we'll watch Jolyn for confirmation, that she scored a perfect on the Advanced Placement Computer Science Principles exam. Wow. We are in the presence of greatness. So she scored a 70 out of 70 on the multiple choice exam and a 6 out of 6 on the creative task. There are, if you were curious, how many folks score a perfect on the AP Comp Sci exam, it is 459 out of 160,000 who take it, which places her in the top 2/1000ths of a percentage. So, Jolyn, we are here to celebrate you and congratulate you.
Wow, Jolyn, this is amazing. Thank you. Thank you for being in our school district. Thank you for all you did. And I am delighted on behalf of the Board of Education to present you with this beautiful proclamation. It says, let's see, whereas Jolyn Kay is a 10th grade student at Agora High School. So we have one favor to ask you. Next year is the CAS testing, state testing for students. Will you please take it and take it seriously, because you can single-handedly improve our scores. So, and a national merit finalist. So take the PSAT, 10th grade, we get you for 2 more years. And you have to keep us posted on, your post-high school plans, because clearly you are going far. So I'm going to cut my speech short because we have your proud Papa Joe Keys here who wants to speak. He's bursting at the seams. So please accept this proclamation on our behalf.
Awesome. Well, I'm incredibly proud, and all those things you guys mentioned are all going to go on our transcript somewhere. I do want to share with you some things that are very, very difficult to measure, characteristics that Jolyn has that will never be seen on a transcript. She's incredibly creative. She has bursting out the seams empathetic skills, where she is also able to just be a great listener no matter what her level is, and then make everyone a better leader around her at all times. She's incredibly passionate, and I'm just so, so proud of her accomplishment, and congratulations.
Madam President, members of the board, thank you for honoring our student tonight. Congratulations to you on your wonderful academic achievement. I wish you nothing but continued success in your academic journey. We're so proud of you from Agora High School, so thank you.
Speech time.
I didn't really prepare anything, but thank you to Mr. Keys, who helped me through the entire course and gave me so much support and so much patience for keeping up with whatever I had going on during the day. He has so much energy during class. It's like first period when I had him, so honestly, I was half asleep. I think it's a miracle that what he's doing. I want to thank the school for obviously registering me for the AP test, helping me get prepared, all the peer counseling stuff like that, and obviously the district for obviously having me as their student and being part of the superintendent's youth council, which I'm very excited to be part of. And I'm just honored to be here, and I'm so happy that I get to be around so many amazing people and what they do. So that's my mom taking a video of me. That's my dad also taking a video of me. No, I'm an only child. Yeah, so I'm the person that gets to keep bothering them happily.
Congratulations.
Let's take a picture with the whole board.
Exactly. Mr. Klein.
All right. Madam President, members of the board, we were very lucky and blessed last week to have W. Bruce Campbell out, or Cameron out, I'm sorry, the writer of A Dog's Purpose and many other Purpose books, #1 New York Times bestseller, as well as #1 USA Today bestseller. So really high-end author out to visit our campuses. He came in person. He went to Lupin Hill. He went to Sumac. Went to Chaparral, several other schools to visit with our kids. He brought his driver and his PA and all of that stuff too. But we were really thrilled to have him here speaking to our kids. Very dynamic speaker, really interesting, and the kids loved having conversation with him. Also, it is Hispanic Heritage Month, as you know, and we all have displays up at all of our media centers. So we recommend if you can visit a school site somewhere near you, definitely visit the media center there. Have a look at their Hispanic heritage displays. As part of that, also, here's Sarah Gustafson. She has an Instagram account. Definitely recommend following Small Piles of Books. She does amazing little videos, and she's promoting her Hispanic Heritage Month here as well. Definitely check her out. And we also have authors, Hispanic authors, speaking with our kids. This was just today. We had a webinar with Nadine Fonseca. She wrote a book called Just a Trenza Away, and she is also the founder of Mighty Kind, and from her website, it's an educational multimedia company for families that aim to use the simple and universal concept of kindness as a bridge to anti-racist and anti-bias learning. So kids loved it. We had hundreds and hundreds of our elementary schoolers watching this cool webinar and listening to Ms. Fonseca speak. We also recorded it, so it's available for all of our classes, even if they weren't able to attend it live. We're really thrilled to be able to bring these to all of our classrooms on a monthly basis for all of our special months.
Ms. Chambers.
Madam President, members of the board, I wanted to share that Assistant Superintendent Falk and I have started conducting site visits together so we can check in with our classified and certificated special education staff. So earlier this month, we went to Chaparral and Calabasas High School and have a couple more visits planned in the next couple of weeks. Our goal with these visits is to check in on our new hires and then to provide support with our existing staff as well.
Ms. Davenport.
Madam President, members of the board, we are excited this year to welcome 17 teachers into the role of elementary instructional support mentors, also fondly known as ISMs. While each school has one ISM position, all but one of our schools has two people sharing these important duties. So the ISMs are supporting our teachers by facilitating district-identified professional development that supports pedagogical strategies, access to SEL resources, and content knowledge expertise. And today, we met for the second time to prepare for the upcoming Staff Development Day on October 9th, where our ISMs will be facilitating a conversation with teachers after listening to a ruler-based message from Joy Jeremiason and Stephanie Skidmore that we hope will lead to greater application of the ruler-based mood meter in our classrooms. The elementary counselors, DEI coordinator Courtney Peoples, we're working together with ruler-based materials to strengthen the work around common tools and common language that supports SEL, or social emotional learning in our classrooms. So many thanks to these 17 amazing teachers for filling this important role.
Yeah. Ms. Patterson.
Madam President, members of the board, we are looking forward to administering the practice SAT to all LVUSD 10th and 11th graders in the second week of October. And just a reminder that the junior practice SAT is how National Merit Scholar qualifying test. So it's how our juniors are identified for scholarships and that particular honor. Also, this is the first year that the PSAT will be digital. And it's a very similar format to the CASP, to the state assessment. And as you know, when we've looked at some of our CASP data, our high school students go from 8th grade until 11th grade without taking a major assessment. So we believe that this will give our students some much needed exposure to this kind of testing environment. It takes about 2 hours and 45 minutes. It's a little shorter than the SAT without the written component. For many students, the PSAT is their first experience with this type of test, and we also think it helps them think about college, AP courses, IB courses they should take. And lastly, those scores will be available for both parents, students, counselors, and in our database in about 6 weeks. And so we plan on loading this into our new Power School platform. And in that way, for your board studies, we can triangulate this data with CASP and grade data.
Thank you.
Dr. Gleason.
Madam President, members of the board, tomorrow morning we have our next Citizens Oversight Committee meeting for Measure S. Exciting to share with them the $17 million in projects that are active, as well as ensuring that they have full oversight of all spending as it aligns to the order of elections. So excited to meet with the group. Of course, they've already been oriented by bond counsel David Kaznoka, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work closely with them.
Dr. Seyfried.
Madam President, members of the board, had the pleasure of spending some time on Friday afternoon with our wonderful Chef Allen from Calabasas High School. She was honored as Las Virgenes Teacher of the Year. Wonderful ceremony. We got to watch folks from all across the county receive this recognition, so congratulations to all of our wonderful teachers who do great things all across the state of California. But a special congratulations to Chef, who's representative of all the above and beyond things that all of our educators and teachers and staff do here in Las Virgenes.
Ms. Fulk.
Madam President, members of the board, twice a year, our SPED admin team is invited to attend Fagan's Special Ed Legal Symposium. It ensures that the district policies align with best legal practices. It also allows us time to collaborate with neighboring districts to see what's going on in their districts, and also helps our SPED admin team form future staff trainings based on best practices learned at these symposiums.
Terrific. Thank you.
That concludes staff communication.
Ms. Westerberg.
Hi, at Calabasas and Agora, I've had a busy couple of weeks. At CHS, the annual spike ball tournament was very successful and gained a lot of participants and watchers. Calabasas also had a back-to-school night along with a bake sale. We also held a Rosh Hashanah nutrition lunch game where students could find apple cutouts in exchange for homemade challah bread, apples and honey or candy. And students absolutely loved it. They actually ran out of supplies at the very end of lunch. Club Rush was very successful at CHS with over 100 participating clubs for students to sign up for. We also held our annual senior spaghetti night, which went very smoothly with lots of participation. And the football team returned from a bye week to play Oxnard last Friday, winning 33-21. Comedy Sports also held its first game on Friday. October will be a busy month at CHS with homecoming, a blood drive, freshman elections for ASB positions, football games, and fundraisers. At Agora, the past few weeks have included the first Agora improv match, the first Try Music Honor Society concert, and the junior class's first junior Java, where they sold coffee and nutrition. Agora High School is looking forward to a very busy week with all their homecoming events. This week is Holiday Spirit Week, including Country vs. Country Club, Adam Sandler Day, Barbie vs. Ken, and Class Color Day, as well as nutrition games each day. On Friday is the pep rally and the homecoming game, and then Saturday is the red carpet ready homecoming dance, which includes Kona Ice and lawn games.
Wow, and who said high school wasn't fun? Thank you. That's great. You guys are busy. Mrs. Gaines.
Hi. I just wanted to mention that tomorrow kicks off the Calabasas Film Festival. So you
thank
can
you.
visit their website. I think it's calabasasfilmfestival.com. And Sunday, they have the student films. So anybody interested, check out their website.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Mangus.
I've been fairly quiet this past, since the last board meeting, but I was able to attend Calabasas's back-to-school night. It was, once again, really nice to see schools returning back to pre-pandemic environments, and it was Mr. Woodkey's first back-to-school night for Calabasas, and I had Ms. Patterson and Dr. Stepanowski with me.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lawrence.
I'll be quick. I just want to thank the staff for all the time they've been putting into the deep data dives that Ms. Stein and I have been going into. I think it's, if this were a corporate organization, we'd have a whole team of data scientists and analysts providing this as a full-time job. And yet, it's, I know, collateral duty of a bunch of folks that are pulling together incredible amounts of data that are letting us really chart a better path for student performance. And it's just fantastic to be able to see it. And, you know, sometimes it's hard to look at the data because it highlights, you know, things that maybe you didn't see before. And some districts, some organizations may not want to look at the data. And I love the fact that that's just not our DNA, that we don't want to leave any stone left unturned if there's a way to improve student outcome and performance. So I want you to know how much it's appreciated and how I know how difficult it's been to get where we're at. So thank you for that time and effort, and then a whole bunch more to come.
Yes. Is that it? Thank you very much. And I would just like to add, thank you, a shout out to Sumac Elementary. I had an opportunity last week to visit and see the new TK. They are adorable. They look like they've been in school a year already. They were on task and fun and asked me questions, and I don't know what's in the water, but those students were amazing. And they're putting in a garden at Sumac, so I got to see where that's going to go. So it's always fun to go out and visit school sites. So I have a couple more coming up. And Mrs. Cutbill and I also participated in Dr. Stepanowski's PASC. That's our preliminary accreditation program for aspiring administrators. So we got to participate in that last week and share with the candidates the role of the Board of Education. They come from many districts, not just our district, and most of them have never seen a board member or heard from a board member. So they peppered us with questions. I don't think they stumped us. And Dr. Stepp, thank you, and thank you everybody who teaches those courses, because we in this whole region, not just Las Virgenes, want the best administrators. So thank you for that. And the teacher luncheon, recognizing Chef Carrie Allen, was just a delight. It's always great to honor our best and our brightest, which is most of our staff, but you got to pick one. And Chef Allen, I learned, is mentoring the new culinary arts teacher at Agora High. So that's wonderful, sharing curriculum and things like that. And with that, I will close staff board communication. And at this point in the board meeting, we hear from delegates or comments from the audience on items not on the agenda. We have no speaker cards, so I'm going to move right along and ask for a motion to approve consent A, please.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on any of the items on consent A? No. Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Student?
Aye.
Board, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 4-0. And may I have a motion to approve consent B?
So moved.
Oh, I'll second them.
Thank you. And this is a board-only vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0. Thank you very much. And with that, we move right along to our action items. And the first one is a public hearing on approval of a grant easement. Dr. Stepp.
Dr. Gleason.
Madam President, members of the board, this is the second part of the three-part series to have EV charging stations over at Agora High School, all part of a grant we received through SoCal Edison. These will go in at no cost to the district, and the district will be able to monetize and profit from any power sold by these charging stations. You can see right here, I have some slides just to kind of give you an idea of where these would go. Should the board approve the grant of easement, you can see right here, right in front of this front parking lot, right off of Driver Avenue is where they would go. There'll be 12 charging stations. And if you go to the next slide, so there's 6 different stanchions that have 2 chargers apiece. They are low profile, low light, low
Maintenance?
That's a good word. I was trying to go for low glow. So you can see what they look like here. These are not your Las Vegas charging stations with big bright lights on them. They just have a screen. Those little things on the left and right are what plugs into the car. You swipe your credit card. We benefit from that. LVUSD does. Roughly $5 to $10 an hour is what a kilowatt hour goes for, or excuse me, what a level 2 charger goes for in the current climate. So we would be able to keep all that revenue.
So these don't require an app download or an account. They're pay to go.
These are pay to go. You scan that EV Connect QR code, and depending on the deal that you had with your dealer on the EV, when you purchase your EV car, you may or may not be able to debit from their account. Yeah.
That's great.
So what kind of maintenance is there, and who's responsible for maintenance?
Edison's would be called for all ongoing maintenance. We provide the land. We provide the access. This is all part of California boosting up its EV infrastructure now with there's a significant spike in non-gas vehicles. So Edison's on the hook for all of that.
Go ahead. Oh, is the power on this generated from our solar that we have?
The power for this will not be generated from the solar. It'll be on a separate meter. We do have the option, should we want to in the future, to connect any EV charging to our grid, but we did not include this in there.
I'm just wondering if we've thought about, like, is there a potential future employee benefit where we can have free charging if it's, charging we're pulling off our own grid or something like that? If that's something.
Most definitely we can, and probably will be the conversation in 5-10 years, if not shorter than that. We can set the rates for charging. We can set the times that we allow charging to happen on our property. And certainly as more and more vehicles turn electric during the day, having our staff parked in these spots is a good thing.
The only other question I had is, what concern do we have about this attracting non-campus people to our campus to charge? Because there actually are not a lot of charging stations in the city of Agoura.
Yeah, it is possible, and it is that is part of the shake on this one, is that to have EV charging that is paid for entirely by Edison on our land also means that we allow for members of the public to come onto that land and charge their vehicles during the day. If you go back to the map, it really is on the edge of campus, and we can set the rates for daytime charging, accordingly.
So we can't have signs that say for, LVUSD students or staff during school hours or the hours, because parking is at a premium anyway for students and staff, right? We never have enough parking. So to have 12 spots taken away by neighbors who are saying, great, I have this down the street from where I live, I don't think that's our intent, or.
Correct. So we would lose 12 spots because when you park in these spots and you're hooked up, you don't want people parking there all day. There's a premium rate that it gets charged. You want them in and out based on when they need it, just like you're filling up your gas in a gas pump. I don't believe per the contract we can restrict the public's access to these. So you, if the board would not want to proceed with this, you would not want to grant the easement tonight.
I guess my overall thought is, for the last 4 years, every single thing we've done is to restrict access to our campuses to students and staff. And the second we put this online, every app will show that there's a charging station for people driving on the 101 to pull off and come to our campus to charge. Your Tesla app will even tell you that in your car. This will show up as the nearest charging location. So we're going to be pulling in people. It's not outside only because of location of where this is. it's actually in a dead zone between Calabasas and Westlake, where there really is no large charging spot.
Have you seen the one on Canaan yet, at the Ralph Center?
Is that open?
It is open.
But that's a,
The one that looks like Las Vegas?
That's
For
EV Go.
Teslas,
Yeah.
or
So
does
the
Tesla
thing
use
about
a
these
different
chargers to
system?
bear in mind is that these are not
No, it's
practical
not for
chargers.
don't
These are
believe so.
level 2 chargers, which are very slow. If you can't park there for more than a couple, 2 or 3 hours, you're getting nothing out of these. The fast chargers are the ones that everybody on the freeway is going to stop for. The EV Go chargers up here
so
at
what do
Cambria.
these charge, what's the
These, they get
speed on it?
maybe 20 miles an hour of charge out of them.
That's a trickle. So
Yeah, it's a trickle comparatively.
no, I
So,
mean, it's technically the trickle charger, so that's.
well, the
these
trickle
are not
chargers are,
high-speed.
trickle chargers are 2 or 3 miles an hour. So this is level 2, which is about 20 to 25 miles an hour. Level 3 is about 80 miles an hour.
The big plug is
That's
22
the-
miles per hour.
No,
That's what I-
the super big plug is about 80 miles an
No, no,
hour.
it's the dryer plug.
The round one, that's just round, which is these, this is about 23 to 25
That's all it
miles
is,
an
it's a
hour.
dryer plug, basically.
Yeah, it's not super fast.
Does
So-
anyone,
Not for Teslas.
No, I mean.
No, you could park a
one's-
Tesla there,
no
but
one's
it'd have to
gonna
be there
pull
all
off
day.
here because it would take you 9 hours to charge your car.
so Dallas, Mr. Lawrence, since you have one of these cars, does it come up then that it's a trickle?
It'll show you the
Charging
speed.
station?
It should show you the speed at which.
It'll tell you it's a level 2 charger.
Okay, so most people won't want it, but somebody who works out of the house in the neighborhood right there, who can drop their car off and walk back home,
These are most useful for students and staff, because it's going to take I have a level 2 at my house. It's going to take 6 hours to do a full charge if you're going from 20% charge. So staff and students and then neighbors, you're not going to stop by here for a
Right.
20-minute charge. That's a
Although I
level 3.
assume that most neighbors have a
You'll get 3
charging
miles.
station in their own home. I mean, we put one in.
It is more and more common to have that level 2 charger in your house, and you hook it up to the 220.
It's a 220 dryer plug.
Yeah.
It's a little more powerful than that, but yeah, it's similar.
But as the infrastructure needs to build up at the exponential growth of electric vehicles, one thing, this will be a conversation that we'll undoubtedly, I believe, have in the future, which is the state has to build up its grid, its infrastructure. It needs land. School districts, of course, are a place where that can be provided. And that's why we're not, in the original facility use study, we did have EV charging stations connected to solar. We kept it off. We're going to be trenching to be able to have EV charging should we want it down the road because of the hedge that we believe that state money will be in place to have these stations installed over the course of the next few years.
So who becomes responsible for making sure that the cars parked there are plugged in and not plugged in and citing them if they're not?
The district.
How do we have no authority to cite?
We have authority to tow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the other piece is, there's the rates, you jack the rates. So after your car is, you can program the
I'm
algorithm.
just saying if they don't plug in at all, they just park there and don't plug in.
Oh, if they
we'd
don't
have to
plug in at all, then it's got to be a tow.
Yeah, but I'm just like, is this now on the principle to have
Right.
somebody going out sweeping and calling and towing?
But we
vehicles?
monitor all our parking. I mean, we do, as much as we monitor all of it.
Yeah,
I
I'm just
mean,
saying
or
this
any of it, I should say.
Yeah, all these are important considerations. Certainly the site would need to monitor it. Certainly parking is a premium at any of our high schools. And so if I don't have a parking spot there and I need a parking spot, I park there and plug in. If you plug in and then are you drawing a rate or did you just plug it into your car and scan your credit card? Like all those things are feasible and would require some level of oversight. The fiscal benefit, it's a trickle, no pun intended, but more than anything, it's a benefit to our staff. And thing I can share with you, low profile, certainly on the fringe of campus, outside the gate, but certainly should we not be ready for this, you just would not grant the easement tonight, and we would go back to Edison.
one of the things in facilities we did, and if you noticed prior board agendas, we did pull it a few times because we wanted to make sure that it was very low visibility. And if you've seen the ones on Canaan, they're big and they're like neon green lights up 24/7 are on them. So this is very low profile. What does the board think?
Well, I have another question. So Dr. Gleason, you talked about we can set the pricing. So do you set it higher during school hours to discourage
Yeah,
campus, or?
it's a new frontier for us. Do we set it higher during school hours?
Except then staff
Unless
would be using it,
if
yeah.
kids are using it and staff, then no. I think the most important rate we set is the squatter rate for the person who stays beyond the charge and is still plugged in. So I think we're going to have to experiment a little bit.
Once the car hits a full charge, the charging station knows that, and you can jack the rate.
Oh,
So
I
that
see.
so you're forcing people to rotate out. I wouldn't recommend charging higher during the day, because that's when your staff and students want to use it.
right.
You could raise the rate after 3, 4, 5 o'clock.
Once it's-
I think the most significant thing is when you turn them off. You can turn them off at 8, you can shut them off at 8, 9, or 10, and they don't start up again until 5, 6, or 7. So
Oh, you
they're-
can? You can shut them off?
Yeah.
So, but that's, I guess, I don't want to send you back to ask more questions, but I would feel more comfortable if we asked the question of, can we restrict access during school hours to LVUSD permitted only spots? And then from 3:30 on and on the weekends, and it's open, and then they're getting what they want out of it, which is more charging for the community during non-use times, and we're not bringing potentially dozens of cars into our campus that don't belong there on a daily basis. I mean, it's.
Would be happy to clarify that with Edison and bring it back.
And when you do that, can you also ask, Oak Park has them, can you ask Oak Park how what they do during school hours?
You got it. Will do.
Okay, then,
I would say that mostly that parking lot is permit parking, and I would think as a community member, I would be leery of parking my car there when you see signs everywhere saying permit parking, because I wouldn't have a permit as a community member.
Except for just the way EV drivers are, you go to your app to find the lowest clear spot, and you just pull in. You don't read any signs. You just like, oh, I can park here, it's on the app. So it's just, that's my only concern about, I love it, and I agree with Dr. Tarnowski. I would not raise the prices during the time, because the people I want to use it as a utility are our staff and our students. So if anything, I'd like, I would almost err on the side of trying to make it as, cost neutral to them as possible, as a benefit to be having encourage them to get an EV, because you can charge at school now for, I wouldn't want us to pay any money for it, but I don't necessarily think we need to make money off our students and staff.
Just to clarify the board's direction, if
that's what I'm trying to find out. So,
I would motion to table this.
okay,
And.
we
till
don't
the
need a
next-
motion for it, but I want to get the rest of the board's temperature.
I could ask a few more questions and bring.
Can I, sorry to interrupt, but
please.
will any parking accommodations be made for those 12 lost spots?
So, interesting question. The answer is I don't know. I know there's possibilities. If we were to zoom out, if this was Google Earth over by where the athletic facility is and the tennis courts right behind there are several spots. As we, over the next few years, we'll be installing a world-class water polo and swimming facility over at Agora High. In fact, we start the design process or the design brainstorm this week. When we do that, that'll affect that lot that's up there, and how we configure the buildings could lead to more parking or not, but not in the short term.
Okay, and do you see them being installed at Calabasas at any time in the future?
No, we applied for this grant. It's a great question. Applied for this grant initially for all of our campuses. Edison only came back with Agora as being the site that was selected. We are installing solar through, by the end of 2024, all campuses should have solar turned on. And when we install solar, we're going to trench to have all the wire and infrastructure ready for EV charging. But we're not going to purchase it at this time because other priorities for the Series A bond, but also B, a belief that there might be more state money coming down the pike.
So part of the analysis, when we applied for the grants, Southern California Edison does what Mr. Lawrence alluded to earlier, look for dead spots. And so they, I think the city of Calabasas has been aggressive in installing charging stations. And so this was the only campus that was located in what SCE, again, they're paying for it, they're paying for the install and the equipment, so they're looking for dead zones or gaps, and this was the only site identified as meeting their criteria.
okay, so Ms. Gaines, are you okay pulling it?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there any reason not to? Are you under a tight, is there, no, okay.
No, this has flirted with the board agenda for a couple months. So,
Yes, because every time we put it in, I keep having more questions and pulling it.
yes,
That's
no
one
problem.
thing
at
I
all.
get to do as president, so.
I guess, the two things, so just to clarify,
Yes,
that I would love
please,
to clarify,
please.
is one, can we restrict access to the,
Yes.
to permitted only, use it during the day? Obviously, that means we're gonna have to have someone who's out there supervising and monitoring it, so there's a kicker for that. And then, do we need 12? Could we do, is there an option to do 6 or 8? I mean, I feel like 12, these very soon could be 12 very big dinosaurs that are sitting there with empty spots.
I believe the answer, in fact, pretty confident that we have to have it during the day and that we need to go with 12. And that said, if that is the answer, would the board, I guess I'll bring it to Facilities Committee to get direction as to if it should come back to the board or if we should go back to Edison and not move forward.
Yeah, so you're going to talk to Oak Park. I think that's a great idea. And taking spots away is definitely a consideration because we never have enough parking. And maintenance. So do they ever go down? I mean, how would we know they go down? So do you get an alert from it that it's gone down? Who monitoring? We need somebody supervising. So if it goes down, how do we know? And I had one more, let's see. So monitoring it for going down and towing cars, which as Ms. Gaines rightfully said, we monitor all of our parking lots to the best that we can. And I think that's great. And in a time when gas is over $6 a gallon, this is a very proactive thing to do. So this is great, but we just have a few more questions.
You got it.
So
I
And
would
gonna-
love for this to, at some point, be able to become something that is only exclusively for our faculty and staff, and that we are able to give it a subsidized cost for the exact reasons you mentioned. So it doesn't cost us anything, but we're able to be below market rate because we're generating our own power. That becomes pretty cool. So,
And we would have the option to do it if we paid for it. So given this is a grant, there's always a rub there. So we'll get more of those details, and should the board not want to proceed, we'll have the infrastructure in place with solar so that Series B, Series C down the road, we decide to do that, we can.
do we eventually get them from them? Do they return to us? Because they are going to make money off it after, is there a payoff period where they're turned over to us?
Yes, I believe that it's a 10-year term, and that also means we are stuck with those spots being available for that period of time. So it's important to ask all these great questions.
And one more that I just remembered. Did we ask the site for input on this, feedback on this?
That would be a good idea. No, I don't believe we did.
Can we do that as well?
You got
We
it.
did. We talked to the site. The location is obviously right on the sidewalk, which is as close to public as you can get. I mean, it's literally on the sidewalk, which is public. And it's also the location for the tie-in, the electrical tie-in, as close as possible to the tie-in, so.
Okay, great. So
Thank
we are
you, Dr.
going to.
Sepp, for doing that.
Thank you. We are going to pull items number 1 and 2 and move on to item 3, which is approval of teacher assignment report. Dr. Stepp.
Dr. Cypress.
Madam President, members of the board, the state has recognized the need to provide flexibility in the assignment of teachers. This particular flexibility allows teachers who have the appropriate course preparation, but not the specific credential to teach a wider variety of subject areas. So per education code, the district has the ability to authorize teaching outside the credential if they have the particular amount of experience in the given subject area that meets the appropriate criteria. Examples that we've done in the past, VAPA, independent study, sports speed, et cetera.
This is pretty standard. We do
Pretty
this.
standard. and
This is a
staff
compliance document.
It is, correct.
Right.
I'll
Okay.
make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Student, do you approve of the teacher assignments?
Aye.
Thank you. Board, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes 4-0. Next up is the MOU with the LVUSD and the LA County Sheriff's Department. Dr. Stepp.
Madam President, members of the board, we've been working with Captain C2 for, about 6 months on this one. We had draft language that's been used in other locations with law enforcement. We shared it with F3, I believe, Dr. Gleason, Fagan, Friedman,
Correct.
Fulfrost,
Yep.
who reviewed the language for us. Captain C2 has secured a $400,000 grant for an emergency response station at Lost Hills Sheriff's, and she's looking to expand coordination, communication, and information sharing between agencies. We currently have 483 cameras on our 14 sites, 15 schools. And this would allow, in the circumstance of an emergency, access to those cameras by Lost Hills sheriffs. I'm supportive of this agreement. We would be the first school district in LA County to enter into such an agreement with LASD. We'll obviously take board direction. I would recommend limiting the permitted access as I review this language, particularly under 4A. This is a situation where we would grant law enforcement access to the cameras, and they would only have it when we grant it. So it would take, Mr. Klein can correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially, in the event of an emergency, which is defined in the MOU, Mr. Klein would send Lost Hills a link to the specific cameras. We have our school sites, divided by specific names to access all the cameras on the sites. And so my proposal for the process was that access only be granted by the superintendent or one of the 3 assistant superintendents, so 4 people. And this is not a situation where LA sheriffs would be able to grab access anytime they wanted. We would have to take specific action to give them access. They can't do anything without this link. So my recommendation to the board would be to tighten this language further. Now, that could impact response time. There are times when, we're traveling, some of us are out of, the area, that sort of thing, but it would take a verbal directive from the superintendent or assistant sup, so 4 people only, to the CTO, Mr. Klein, and then he would shoot out the link. So that would be my recommendation on how to further tighten this up.
So are you asking us to table this tonight to bring back stronger language?
No, I'm happy to make that amendment specifying that in
Okay.
item 4A.
Okay. I mean, the way I read it is exactly what you said. It's only released to the sheriff, so they don't have unlimited access. It's only released to the sheriffs with parental concern, health and safety emergencies, and a court order or subpoena. So we have done this, if I'm not mistaken.
But there's a key line that's confusing that I noted here that I didn't understand. I think that's what Dr. Sepp wants to change, and it says LASD may access the video surveillance footage in an emergency without prior approval from the district. So what I'm trying to figure out is, if they're able to do it without prior approval, that means they have some sort of control switch where they can toggle it on and off.
Yeah, they are not able to without.
But as written, this would.
Correct.
The change you want to make is they.
Absolutely, yes.
As it's currently written, they have a switch where they can turn it on if we give them permission.
Correct.
Or if not, if it's a case of emergency, we're saying we're taking away your ability. We have to actually turn it on for you.
Correct.
And that's the.
They can do nothing until we get a directive from a superintendent to the CTO, and the CTO takes action. So this isn't like a link that they have that they
It's a
just.
feed. You turn on and off from here.
We give them the link to it. We give them access to the link.
Does that link change after each time, or if they have it one time?
Mike, Mr. Klein, Mike, please.
Sorry, yeah, it would only be active during the event of the case of the emergency, and then we would pull it back down.
So if they wanted to
blocking
see
it from our
5 minutes worth of film.
Well, that's not what
the
this
recording.
is.
This is the live feed.
This
They want
is
the
live.
This is live
Oh,
feed. So
okay.
if they
So
want live
something's going on
access-
at school, they at a school site, they get notified, and they want to tap in immediately to see what's going on, right?
The use cases, we just saw the prisoner who broke out of jail, right? If somebody was fleeing the region in this area, they would want every single camera to be watching in real
Exactly.
time. And we would probably have no problem with that. So they could monitor every camera in real time if the person's in this area. But
Exactly, or
well, we
somebody
had
on
the-
campus doing something where
Yeah,
we don't want, and they want to, they're sending the sheriffs into campus, and they want to access
Yeah,
cameras.
that's a great example. We had the Malibu shooter, the sniper, right? So that person was, on the lam in the, 160,000 acres of open space out here, and they eventually caught him by the Agora Calabasas Community Center because he was breaking in and stealing candy bars. So my guess is, Captain C2 would request access, and it had to be granted by one of the 4 people in the room.
now, is the single point of failure, I don't mean that in the sense of their failure, but like the single, would be Mr. Klein. If he's not available, we can't turn, even if permission's been given, he has to physically hit a button to send this, and is he the only one who knows how to do that?
No, I think you've got several
What is it, the
network
nuclear
engineers who could
codes?
do it, right? You've got
We
Mr.
have
Starr.
several people in our department, but we could literally create a system that these guys could log into and grant access by pressing a button. I mean, it's not a complicated thing for us to do. As I've mentioned in prior board meetings, we're going to have a emergency management system as well. So if we had, for example, an active shooter situation and someone presses the active shooter button, we could even, with the superintendent's approval, have authorized that system to automatically send access to the sheriff's department. So we can handle all of that.
This went through facilities?
I believe. It wasn't facilities?
This went to safety and wellness.
Safety and wellness, yeah.
I'm not a privacy conspiracy theorist. I tend to rely more on open access and transparency is great. But our students have legal rights, and I don't feel like I, as a board member, have heard from a lawyer walk me through all the legal ramifications of this, that I would want to vote on it. So I don't know. This being the first in the region is sometimes great. Sometimes it's a little, we're treading into areas of privacy and, Big Brother that I would just kind of feel like I would like to know what the legal ramifications are, or if there's other districts that have done this.
Yeah,
Yes,
F3 review
Yeah.
the language. So
I
all
just
of our
like to hear.
cameras are in public-facing spaces, outward-facing spaces. I can't think of any in interior spaces. So all of our cameras are located in areas where there's not a reasonable expectation of privacy.
Okay.
So that's, they're not in classrooms, that sort of thing.
They're not in restrooms, they're not in classrooms.
Not in restrooms, they're
Right.
not in locker rooms. So they're not in any location, which is legally the standard we have to meet. We can't, put these in, health offices where students and staff would have a reasonable expectation of privacy.
Would the board feel better to have the language changed and then vote on it?
Yes, I think so.
Sure.
I just have a quick question.
Please.
Since they're in considered public spaces, would any parental consent be needed then from the children?
No.
Okay. And then also, what qualifies as a safety and health concern?
And I think that is your questions are always excellent,
And that-
but I think that is what the board needs to know. What
Well, and that
constitutes
may
an
be right.
emergency, health and safety?
And that may be why they don't want to give them unilateral access, that, the district determines that decision.
Yeah, so under definitions 2A describes emergency
Mm-hmm.
situations. So a health-related emergency could be a sniper or a person of interest. We have, unfortunately, the most common incident around here is bank robberies, to be quite honest, and people fleeing
Mm-hmm.
on foot near the 101 freeway.
I don't mean to
So
laugh. Sorry, that's not.
that could be an exigent circumstance. We had that occur at AC Stell several years ago, where people stole a car, crashed on Topanga Canyon, ran through campus. So I could see, Captain C2 saying, we've got this situation, we'd like access to the
I
cameras.
mean, this makes total sense to me to allow this. We
Right.
have camera, if it's security, if it keeps campus more safe, but I just want to make sure that it seems like we've exhausted all the legal issues and we've thought through it, but I'd rather see the words written out here. This is I don't want to say, this is there's a lot of complexity in how this agenda item was written, let me say it that way. And it might be great to make it less complex, so that it's very clear what we're allowing, what we're not allowing.
Sure. So we're looking for a less complex document.
I'm looking for something that says if A happens, B is authorized, right? Where there's a lot of
I don't know. I mean, I just don't think I live in that world. I mean, the fire
Exactly.
departments may say,
Right.
we've got a Woolsey fire and we want to know if, there's embers at Lupin because we're fighting the fire at AC Stell.
And that language isn't in your document, so we can't know that, right?
That's fair.
Or we think somebody planted a pipe bomb, or we can't have a whole laundry list of the what-ifs.
Right, but
So,
we can tighten up the language that
Right.
says the district and who at the district authorizes it. And
Yeah, I
for
think
these
that's the
general
choke
reasons.
point
Yes.
I'm interested in further defining. is
Exactly.
Who, is, has standing orders, shall we say, right? Standing orders from the Navy with the authority to make that call.
Okay. And a student, they're not giving up any of their current kind of constitutional rights, any way, shape, or form, from undue search and seizure or undue, supervision by law enforcement, because you're saying all the cameras are in an open space where they have no expectation of privacy.
Right now, we do that. Mr. Klein has reviewed footage before, vandalism, and you see them in action, right? And if you
I
can
mean,
recognize them. and-
Ms. Falk discussed a situation in closed session. You know, the cameras were utilized in part of that investigation.
So I think, let's bring it back. Boy, we're batting 1,000 here. Let's bring it back
There's
with.
no rush.
with-
We want to get this right.
Yeah, with the who, what, where, and why to the best that we can to tighten it up.
Could we ask for maybe whatever write-up the lawyers gave in the Friday letter or something, just to read? Or if there's an article that's been written about this somewhere else, like on what the kind of perspective is from privacy rights advocates on something like this? I'd
Sure.
love to do.
Yeah, we can have an attorney
Maybe a
present
memo,
also if you
right,
want.
or maybe a memo from them regarding the
just-
privacy,
yeah.
to go along
A
with
memo?
the document,
Yeah.
right? I
Sure.
don't know.
Yeah, an exhibit, Exhibit A with it.
Sure.
Whatever works, or
Okay.
they can come in person, whatever works for you.
Whatever's cheapest,
Yes, whatever.
probably the memo.
I was just trying to say whatever works for them.
Okay, next item is another compliance, so I think we
Let's
should.
just table it.
I think we'll have no issues with the next one. It's approval of the variable term waiver permit. Dr. Stepp. Or should we just go over to
Dr. Cyphers.
Dr. Cyphers?
Madam President, members of the board, this variable term waiver permit can be granted when the candidate is authorized, has a degree in a specific subject area. This particular one is for two of our outstanding teachers at Sumac Elementary, Marissa Pike and Kimberly Johansson, who are working toward their bilingual authorization and their BCLAD respectively, and they require this waiver for the 23-24 school year.
Thank you very much. I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Student, do you approve?
Aye.
Great. Board, all those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0. Thank you. Next is the information items. What do we have first? We have, staffing and enrollment. Dr. Cyphers.
Always a popular one this time of year, and always like to, before we get started with it, first of all, this is something that is brought to you by our Human Resources Department and our Business Department. Gives you enrollment on staffing, things like new hires, class sizes, enrollment trends. Before going into the presentation, I always like to express the most sincere thanks I possibly can for everybody who has gotten the school year off to such a fantastic start. When we talk about these slides, we're talking about our counselors who spend a ton of time on the master schedule. We're talking about our teachers who work and are super flexible with the master scheduling process, shifting grade levels and things of that nature. And certainly I think to our classified staff who's also highly responsible in getting folks on board and getting them started for the school year. And this year, we introduced 74 new employees to the team. So again, a lot of work goes into that from both classified and certificated staff. 22 new certificated employees covering spans with general education, special education, counselors, school psychologists, and speech and language, and 52 classified employees. As we take a look at that list there, just nothing but plaudits and thank yous to Ms. Hallie Chambers and Ms. Angie Falk for all the work that they've done for making sure that our teams are ready to rock for the school year. But a ton of work and a ton of creativity and a lot of success in filling our vacancies for the school year. So thank you specifically to Ms. Chambers and Ms. Falk for all that terrific work. We also, terrific news on substitute teachers. So we had a great deal of success in a most recent round of substitute teacher interviews, actually hired 28. We've been doing these rolling interviews now for 3 years. It's really helped strengthen our substitute pool when we had our largest turnout in our most recent interviews. So we are pumped to get these folks on board as soon as we can. And then we have another round that is scheduled for October 5th, 2023 to continue to strengthen our substitute pool. Part two of our presentation, we're going to shift to the business office to talk about our enrollment across the board in LVUSD.
This is a highly sought-after Buttercup slide. So we have 78 students in Buttercup, and that perfect, or close to perfect 50-50 mix that model program is built upon. Of course, Buttercup enrollment, when we compare it to 21-22, you might say, hey, what happened? And what happened was TK. TK happened. So as TK becomes a the norm for 4-year-olds, we see Buttercup being impacted. So we went from 8 classrooms to 6 classrooms. And if we go to the next,
So what are we doing with the other 2 classrooms?
Ms. Falk?
So one of the classrooms we are using for an IEP room. The other classroom, we're developing our sensory motor room.
Terrific. And did we need to move some special education teachers around because of the enrollment? I mean, enrollment basically the same as last year, but from 21, 22?
We did not move teachers. We had some retirements and some resignations, so that we did not fill.
Okay. So this is basically a 3-year program, a 3-year-old program right now, right, for 3-year-olds? Yes. Okay. Very cute.
3 and very young 4-year-olds.
Okay.
So this shows you our enrollment versus our projection in fall 2022. With the census just happening, our demographer had a conservative estimate that we might be sitting at 9,200 students. Through the work of our sites and whole team effort, we landed right now, we're at about 9658 as of Friday, with many of our sites seeing an increase in enrollment, a rebound from the statewide trends. We do have a couple sites that have had a small drop from those projections, but all things considered, when we have more students, that allows us to maintain and sustain the great programs that bring families to Las Virgenes. If you wanted to compare where we were in September of last year at the same time to now, you'll see that our enrollment overall went down about 38 students. Statewide average is anywhere between 1.5% to 2.5%. So all things considered, we really flattened the enrollment plateau and hope to sustain that so that we can, again, sustain our great programs.
And the projections of 9,200, I mean, that is what you take into consideration for budgeting and staffing, correct? I mean, that really is your guide until the numbers actually materialize, correct?
Absolutely. That every student and how many days they attend school, it's always a crystal ball prediction. And a lower student count, especially with the drop that we see across the state, would have significant impacts that we were able to, with the board's leadership, weather this year. Cohort growth. So this is a way to see how a group of students shifted over time. So you see the growth from TK to K. That's just families who didn't start in TK but now are in kindergarten. But across the board, this has usually been a red trend line across, and what we're seeing is, especially at the young grades, we're seeing high cohort growth. So that means more first graders than there were kindergartners the prior year, more second graders than there were first graders, taking the same cohort of kids and seeing growth across that. So from a long-term fiscal standpoint, you'd want to see, if you had to have any red, you'd want to see it exactly where it is. And if you saw a double-digit green, you'd want to see it in the lower grade levels to benefit from the students over time. So a lot of positive indicators there, which has me handing it back to the HR department.
We'll take a look at each elementary grade level span and their class sizes, and you can kind of see the overall averages as we go through each particular slide. So when we look at our TK through 3, our class size average there for the overall grade level span is going to be a targeted ratio of 24:1. You'll see that when we look at like TK and K, you're going to see hopefully on the lower end of that. So this is an example within our TKs. You can see the wide span of different class sizes we have there. The overall average is 20 across the district for TK, which is a terrific number. And as we hop to kindergarten, you can see they're a little bit more closer together as far as the overall span, anywhere between 20 and 24 students. And across the board, that is an average of 22 in our kinders. Same exact average in first grade of 22. A wide variety of classes there, predominantly either 21 or 23. Going right along to second, you'll see as we get into second and third, you'll see that average get to 24, and you'll see some classes on the higher end there, 25, 26, even 28. And then
I thought we were bonused for keeping under an average of 25 up to third grade. Is that right?
Or penalized, one or the other, you know?
for TK,
No,
there's
there was a somewhere
There
between
used
the
to be,
second,
right.
third, or fourth grade level, we were either penalized or bonused, one of the
Right.
two, if we went over 25 average for the class size.
That was class size reduction, when they started class size reduction under,
But this was just in the last 5 years. This wasn't like 20
no,
years ago.
no, they waived that.
In 2014, that went
Yeah.
away.
Have I been on the board that long?
Yes, you have.
This is the reflective moment for Mr. Lawrence. Yeah, the only penalty this year would be TK.
Right.
Okay.
But we do try to staff our, right, Dr. Cyphers, we try to staff lower at the low grade levels. We try the best we can. As Dr. Rose Dunn used to say, students don't come to us in nice, even packages.
Yeah, this is, so if you look, our average is.
Bundles, right.
Our average is 24-1. If we're, hopefully, we do, as Ms. Stein, you're pointing out, we do try to be on the lower end when we talk about kindergarten. We try to, obviously, that average is going to be a little bit on the higher end when we talk about second and third. The way that it's worked out this year is perfect. It doesn't always work out like that. But if you look at, TK being an average of 20, slowly progressing to 21, 22, 24, I mean, that's, if you're lucky enough and fortunate enough to have it like that, fantastic. It doesn't always work like that.
What, I mean, that's one school thought on it. No, go back to second grade. Is there's a 40% swing between the class that has 20 kids and the class that has 28 kids. And so, what is the outlier of those three classes of 28? Are they all at the same school, or are they all, like, what is it that?
If you see that, so if you see a large number like 28 at that school, you're going to see a very small class somewhere else. So for example, I'm doing this totally off of memory, but I believe the couple classes of 28 are at Bay Laurel, and they have very, very small TK classes. So I think on the previous slide, we saw something like 14 and 15. Yeah. That's where it is.
Do any of these larger classes, like the 28, have any part-time aides or anything in there to help?
There's nothing specifically that we do. We would talk to our team about, hey, look, this is a large class size. There's no guarantees, but when you have that additional aid support, this is where we need it. We need this support in your second grade class of 28.
And sometimes it's a school site that prefers to
Correct.
not have split classes.
Yeah, it's another great point is you have some folks who say, hey, we'll take this larger class as opposed to having a combination class at 2-3. However, other sites have cultures that love combination classes.
Right.
It just depends on the site.
But if I can generalize, it's usually, this is done by the principal with site input,
Yes.
generally, right?
This was something that, and so I, when I see something like that, I ask that question. I say, hey, are your teachers on board? Did you talk about it with your teachers? And it typically is, the answer is yes. And, they're comfortable with the larger classes, and it helps our TK folks who have smaller classes.
Thank
I'm
you.
not sure if the teacher with the 28 is one of the ones who's comfortable with it, but the majority of the campus is probably comfortable with it.
Collectively, that's the collaborative decision that they reached.
Yeah.
And I mentioned it before. We do have folks who are just amazing and super flexible, and they know that some years it might, have a larger class size. Some years they might have a smaller one.
Okay.
Closing it up at the TK through 3 spans, there's third grade, and again, you kind of see that same variance with some smaller, and as we get to third grade, you are going to see ones that are a little bit larger in the area of 26, 27, 28. As we jump to the upper grade, so our average here is going to be 30.5, so that's the ratio that we staff at. And you'll notice all across the board in elementary, we're a little bit under what our average typically is. At 4th grade, we're anywhere from 27 to 33, with the overall average being 29. 5th grade, I think, is almost eerily similar, with the overall average of 30.
This seems higher to me than normal. Was 5th grade, where are we at for our averages if you look at like the last, holding kind of COVID as an outlier year?
So one thing that is absolutely accurate is the last 2 years we have focused funds to class size reduction at the elementary level. So these numbers are back to normal, so to speak. So these are numbers that we have always staffed at, or I should say always, we have staffed at for a considerable amount of time. The last 2 years we allocated funds specifically in the area of class size reduction. So these may seem a little higher than the last 2 years.
34 5th graders seems like a lot.
Yeah, it is not outside of the norm to have
It's not.
33, 34, 35 in an upper grade classroom.
How do we compare to Oak Park?
Oak Park's, I have a whole chart I could show you in a Friday letter. I don't know it off the top of my head. Oak Park is traditionally higher in TK through 3 and about where we are in 4 through 5.
Interesting.
Yeah, and there are ones that are lower. I think Caneo's a little lower in TK through 3, so we're in the middle of the 5 surrounding districts.
And thank you for checking on that,
course.
really. Keep,
Yeah,
keep
and happy
your
to-
eye on that's great.
Happy to provide the board. I've got a little chart that I always reference in a Friday letter I could share too. Referenced them earlier, special situations, so we always share these with the board as well. Combination classes, I'd say it's pretty much the norm to have at least 1, maybe 2 each year on a campus. Some have, just 1 with a TKK. Others are in a situation where they have 3. These are typically to even out class sizes and have, ratios that meet those averages nicely. And I would also say too, there are folks and students and community members who really love their combination classes. There's obviously varying opinions on them, but there is a lot of folks who say, hey, I love having my student be in an independent learning classroom. And like I said, the opinions vary. We have, so we shift to secondary. So we're looking now
But
at,
going back to your splits for a second, this
course.
is where schools and principals take into consideration all class sizes to try to balance the class sizes out.
this is typically, you referenced Dr. Dunn earlier, this is typically where one would say students don't come in perfect packages of 24 and 30.5. And it's not always evenly going to fall.
I would just say my parental experience with peer parents is that it is not an even Steven, that some like it and some don't. It is pretty heavily tilted, at least anecdotally, that parents do not like having their kids in these classes. Now, I also know what all the science and numbers tell us, that there is no actually detrimental impact in the educational environment. That it's more a perception game. These parents are perceiving that teachers teaching 2 different grade levels, so my kid must be getting half as much time. But I definitely get more emails from parents who are put into a split, unhappy about it, than those who say, boy, I'm so happy I'm in a split.
For sure.
Actually, I've never gotten one of those emails.
Well, it really depends on the culture of the school. I'm looking at the list, and I'm not going to name names, but there are some schools where that is the culture. And again, you have independent learners. They can be lower class sizes. There is, I had one child who was in a split in 1-2, I think, or 2-3. No, 2-3 split. But it's a conversation that they have. A lot of thought. That's what I want to say. A lot of thought goes into this.
I would share as a principal, and this is now dated 10 years ago, but we would have people fighting to get in our split classes.
Right.
I mean, they were upset with me if why am I not in the combination class?
To Dr. Cyphers' point before, independent learners, you tend not to have the behavior issues in split classes. So,
I think it's, I
But-
understand why we do it, I understand
Yeah.
the science behind it, but
I think it's mixed out there. I also think we tend, unfortunately, not to get the emails that say, hey, thank you for
Right.
putting me in the split.
I do
So
think
you
the
don't
one-
hear from them.
I think the one cohort.
Can you send me one,
that-
Jill?
The one cohort that we don't engage in that conversation with on campus when we're selecting those is the parents. And that's the angst that I hear, is that if there are parents who love to be in it, we should have that opportunity for those parents to rise up and raise their hand before we self-select and put kids into it whose parents are against it. And we don't do that today. We do the, and I understand that the teachers probably know the kids best for the splits, and that's why the process happens without that parental input. But that's why we get the blowback after it's happened, because parents
For sure.
who don't want to be in it feel like I had no choice in this. Why me? So.
I remember, it might be site to site, there actually were some sites that asked parents.
I was going to say, I wouldn't leave it out there that as a blanket statement, because I'm not sure that is current practice.
And it may have been the school that your experience was.
Right.
but I
School,
don't think it's
principal.
necessarily, because I remember it wasn't, yeah.
And as you articulated, regardless of the process to include the parental input, 100% of the time, our teachers are very, very intentional about,
I know that's true. Yeah.
student behavior and what would be best for that student. And they really do look in the best interest of the student. The next portion, we always talk about our classes over 40. We shift to the secondary level and our classes under 25. So at the middle school, we have 1 class over 40, it is at Lindero, and it is 42 students in a algebra honors course. The high school over 40 is zeros across the board, and that quickly shifts us to under 25. Under 25 is a little higher than the over 40. We're looking at AE Wright predominantly as a decent amount, under 25, one gate, class 1, math 8, another 7th gate for social science, and then a couple in science. AC Stell has one, and is a math 6 class, and Lindero has some at the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade levels in ELA, math, social science, and science. High school, not as many at the middle school level. There is at Agora AHS 1 English 4, 1 Algebra 1, a government and physiology, and then at CHS there are 3 different math courses that are under 25, and Algebra 1, a stats, and data science. Said it before, I'll say it again, just a huge kudos to everybody who just goes above and beyond to put this together. Some pictures from the first day of school, some of our new folks that we just brought on board. I think that might be us in our Agora High School classroom that we just referenced earlier. And just a big welcome to all of our new folks, and congratulations to everybody on an awesome first month of school.
Thank you very much. Any questions? That was excellent.
I just have a quick question. So for the slide that says that like the 40 and then it's greater in the core classes, that's saying that there are 0 classes with over 40 kids at those high schools?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. That has always been the board's value, is to try very hard to keep classes under 40. They're still big with the high 30s, but that really at the high school level especially has to do with student choice, right? And we try very hard to give our students what they want in course selection. And so we very rarely have years where there's under 40. So this is great scheduling. Thank you, everyone.
Just a caution for your notes is that's as of one snapshot in time, that's September 22nd. Students still in the first 6 weeks have some mobility. So
Yeah, they're
you go
moving.
back and you find, oh, there's one at 40 or whatnot. It's just, kids are continuing to be scheduled.
And it's not all that common, but we do have students families moving in during the school year, so they'll start their students in the middle of the year. So there is a little bit of flexibility in all of our schools with that. But thank you to everyone who has a handle in staffing and scheduling. It's a heavy lift to get everybody where they need to be. So thank you very much for that. Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay, moving right along to Healthy Kids Survey.
Ms. Davenport and Ms. Patterson.
Thank you. Is the clicker? Thanks so much. Madam President, members of the board, Ms. Patterson and I are pleased to bring you a summary of district-level data from the California Healthy Kids Survey given in the spring of 2023. The survey aligns with LVUSD's desire to ensure that all our programs are dedicated towards enhancing student success, and that our schools are grounded in strong relationships that provide the foundation for positive school climates where students are valued emotionally and challenged academically in a really personalized environment. The California Healthy Kids Survey is a tool supported by the California Department of Education to help districts meet local control accountability, LCAP priorities to improve school climate, pupil engagement, and academic achievement. The survey was given to LVUSD students in grades 4 through 12. We're pleased to report that the overall results from all grades, 4 through 12, reflect a very strong sense of belongingness, connectedness, and feelings of safety and security. Also important to note is that overall, LVUSD continues to exceed the county and state averages in almost every area of the survey. But in the spirit of continually improving, Educational Services is looking at the important growth opportunities that the data reveals for our schools. We'd like to show you a summary of district-level data for each band of students and share next steps that will positively impact our students. We'll start with the elementary band, which includes students only in grades 4 and 5. Today, we're presenting district averages for the 9 categories of questions given to our elementary students. Each line on the chart represents a module of questions that address the general themes of one, at this school there is an adult who really cares about me. At this school there is an adult who listens to what I have to say. At my school there is an adult who believes that I can do a good job. I meaningfully participate in school. I am happy to be at this school. I feel safe at my school. The rules are clear at my school. And finally, I feel sad most or all of the time. This chart shows the data from the spring of 2022 in yellow, the spring of 2023 in blue, and then on the left side, a comparison of the 2 years. The reason for elementary that the comparison data is in red or dark red is because the responses this past spring, although still high, are a decrease from the previous year. So from this data, we have several important takeaways and next steps to share with the board. So even though our percentages remain high, every elementary did report an increase in negative responses in one or more areas. Our scores, even though they dipped from last year, are still above county and state averages. But the reason for the dip may be due to the 22-23 school year, reflecting really continuing efforts to hold high expectations for all our students in the areas of academic achievement and citizenship as we leave the impact of the pandemic behind. So this past year, as we continue to move beyond the pandemic, our older students, especially grades 4 and 5, were asked to be more independent. They were held more accountable for the high expectations we have for them both academically and socially as citizens of their classrooms and their schools. They were asked to be more responsible for their attitudes and actions. We will continue to support our students as we challenge them appropriately to pursue their potential as scholars and citizens. The other line I wanted to point out is the meaningful participation at our school. If you noticed, it has the lowest average score of all the areas measured in elementary, an average of 41.5%. But it's important to note that the state and county average is about the same.
I had one quick question on this. I meant to ask it during our data session. Really significant bump in participation of this survey at the elementary school. It's the largest of all of our grade levels, where you see from 4 and 5 in 2022 to 4 and 5 in 2023. But what did we do to make that happen?
Let me go back.
I mean, it's almost like a 30% increase in some of these cases.
So the meaningful participation in school changed by 1%.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, the participation in taking the actual survey.
Oh.
So you look at fourth grade was 457 in 2022. Fourth grade this year is 603. Like, we saw a huge jump in those who took the test. Was there something that we did? Because I know one of our challenges has been on some of these tests, getting them to be able to take them. But what happened there?
I think there was increased communication in a more timely manner about the testing and making sure that all teachers were administrating it.
They take it at school.
They do.
And how does, with all of the elementary numbers going down, is that reflective statewide?
It did. I can't say statewide. We cannot see
Okay, county.
a lot
or-
of, the numbers there. But we did check many of the averages in the categories to compare. And yes, we are at or above. We are still exceeding positive responses in almost all the areas.
And the students take this online?
They do.
But to your question, we know that we're higher than the state averages, but we don't actually know if our decreases are larger than, if we're going down at a faster rate than those around us, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Were these tests administered? I know last spring we started doing a major push on attendance and tardies, getting to school and getting to school on time. So were these tests administered around, or this survey administered around that time? That could add a little bit of stress on students and families?
Correct. You're absolutely right about that. This was administered just after the district's push to improve attendance. And I wholeheartedly agree that that has an impact.
I can tell you, going down a rabbit hole, that years ago, many years ago, when my children were in elementary school, they had a new principal at the school, and she was not thrilled with the amount of tardies because the students lined up on the blacktop. And so she parked the office manager out front, and everybody got a tardy slip. And my own children were very stressed about that. And what I reminded them at the time, this just shows you how stress manifests itself. What I told them at the time was, you've never been late before in your life. You'll never be late, so this doesn't apply to you. You're going to be on time. But they were so stressed in the morning. So I can only imagine, that this did take a toll on the stress.
Agreed. Students absolutely take that seriously. The last two takeaways that we have in elementary from the data in our chart is that it is our district's 4 largest elementary schools that have the most areas that fall below our district average. So all our elementary schools receive the same staffing for administration, for teachers in charge, for counselors. And so given that increase, that higher enrollment in some of these elementary sites, this might be an important factor to consider as we review future allocation and support in fiscal and human resources.
I think this is something that Ms. Diane and I really drilled into in the committee work, because I think it's stark when you think about, I think the difference was an average of 100 students more per campus without a single additional adult dedicated to the totality. Obviously, they have more teachers because they have more students, but there isn't a single additional person to deal with the sick kids, the fights, the social emotional stuff than a campus, 30% smaller. And those 4 schools, all 4 of them had, I think, consistently the worst grades on the social, on the safety thing. So again, to my previous comment about an opening statement about the value of you turning over every rock, I think intuitively we always know more people would be better on campus, but when you see data that says, no, there actually is kind of a tipping point where you have so many more students and not enough just campus-wide resources that you start to have data, that I really value the amount of effort we put into this. And I appreciate that. I know finance is going to be digging into what are our options for, Mr. Gleason's smiling.
He's thrilled.
But I think, then I don't think anybody, no one believes this, but if we don't want to fix it, let's not test, right? The whole reason why we take these tests and administer all this time is we want to find solutions. And I think that, it seems pretty directionally clear that, and it also just makes common sense.
And I think some of our schools have like 200 students more.
Yeah, I think the average between the 4 was like 100, but still, to your
Yeah.
point, I think it was like one was like 180.
Right,
And
right.
it's, one principal, one counselor, that for 180 extra students to try to capture these things in real time. So I think it's.
So thank you to Dr. Gleason and our elementary director and our finance board members who are going to get digging into this and find money. Look under every sofa.
Sorry to interrupt. Could you just go back to that last slide really quickly? It says that it's efforts at school sites so that students can be their best selves every day. What efforts are working toward that?
Great question. Thanks for asking. So we are having Courtney Peoples, our DEI coordinator, work directly with our instructional support mentors and our elementary counselors and our principals as well to make sure that we're using common tools and a common language around social emotional learning so that our kids are able to handle the expectations of high achievement and handling the conflicts with their peers so that the classrooms are more positive climates for our students.
And the elementary schools have many of them have really embedded in the ruler program. I don't know are you familiar with that? I know okay. That is a social emotional thing, identifying feelings with actual words and knowing they have a mood meter. We can share this with you where they can see that their mood throughout the day can change. So, and gives them the language and the tools to recognize that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, I'd like to show you some of the data on middle schools. And when you look at the table for middle schools, the questions on the left-hand side are slightly different than they are for our elementary students. The questions are, at this school, there is an adult who really cares about me. At this school, there is an adult who listens to me when I have something to say. At my school, there is an adult who believes that I will be a success. At school, I do things that make a difference. I am happy to be at this school. I feel safe at my school. I've experienced chronic sadness or hopelessness in the last 12 months. I've considered suicide. And so these last two questions are significant questions to ask a young adult, and I'm really pleased to tell you that the green suggests that our students are feeling slightly better. We have had very gentle shifts, but I think coming out of the pandemic, it's very hopeful that for our district 7th graders, we see a 5% decrease in the number of students who felt chronically sad or hopeless. And suicidal ideation is down as well. They were the lowest when this was disaggregated by middle school. They were the very lowest at A.E. Wright and Lindero Canyon, where we had both a wellness counselor and a restorative TOSA last year. AC Stell did not have both positions, and their data was not quite as strong, although holistically, the data across the board is promising. At AC Stell, overall, student happiness and the belief that an adult cares were slightly lower. We look forward to making a positive difference for all students in middle school this year with the No Place for Hate campaign, and for providing targeted assistance for students identified through California Healthy Kids Survey through our Power School data. And in answer to the earlier question, just a reminder that, for instance, for the middle school cohort, the 586 students who were 7th graders last year were the 570 students who were 8th graders in 2023. So there's actually quite a bit of variance sometimes across the grade levels. It was a fairly small 8th grade class last year, and they were small when they were a 7th grade class. So there's some variance in class size.
The one thing I would just call out, because I think it's misleading in how the test is somehow construed, is that, not misleading on our behalf, it's this test we're to deal with, is at school I do things that make a difference. You could read that and say only a third of kids answered yes to that. That's not the question they're being asked, right? It's a averaging of 6 or 7 different questions that are kind of thematically clumped into somebody said, I make a difference. So it's just, I think it's not a one-for-one verbatim, but that's the question asked and that's the answer.
That's such a great statement. It's a series of about 8 to 9 questions that get at your interest at school, et cetera. And I've put up there for you that although it's a fairly low score, we'd like for it to be higher. The state and county average is even lower.
Yeah. Great.
Okay. So now we're looking at our high school data. The high school data, again, it has the same question, that question where we really want to see improvement at the bottom of the questions around chronic sadness or hopelessness or seriously considered suicide. And they were significantly improved, which is just exactly where we would want to be. I'd love to see this trend continue. As you can see, for our 12th graders, it was a 17% decrease in chronic sadness and hopelessness. Just some really good harbingers coming out of the pandemic that our high school students are feeling better. There were some outliers, very few, and they seem to be a few more at Calabasas, but it's such slight differences that we'd have to look at it over time with a cohort of students. I feel safe at my school was lower by 18% for 9th graders at Calabasas. And I know one of the things that administrative team and teachers are planning for the PSAT day is some activities for their 9th graders to really help them acculturate to high school and feel safe and happy and part of that culture. And again, to Board Member Lawrence's point, even though I do things that make a difference, was the lowest score of all areas measured for high school. The state and county average is about the same.
Ms. Westerberg, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Does that I feel safe at my school from 9th graders, is that typically a decrease because they're like switching schools? Okay.
Yes, it is slightly lower. I mean, it's something we would still want to improve, but yeah.
All right,
Yes, it
thank
is.
you.
Good question. So going forward in 23-24, we will discontinue the use of the Core Rally social emotional survey that we've been using. It has slightly dissimilar questions, and we'll be administering these questions from the California Healthy Kids Survey 3 times a year in order to provide more real-time and actionable data to support students. We can do that with a Google form, and we can upload that information into PowerSchool, where we will be better able to understand the experience of various subgroups and be able to take steps to provide support. In the spring, we'll give the official California Healthy Kids Survey and our district data submitted for state purposes.
When are we going to be using PowerSchool? When are the schools going to be using it?
We are currently kind of at the final stages of wrapping up our data mapping. It's called Map and Gap, and essentially what we do is we map all of our codes to things that PowerSchool will understand, so it can produce all of the pretty graphs and charts and all of the lookups that we need. I have another meeting with them this Thursday to wrap that process up. After that, it's just a matter of probably a week or two, and we'll start having access and be able to start rolling with it.
And how does the data get rolled over to it? Or are we starting from scratch? Or?
No, the data was relatively automatic. It pulls everything directly from Aries. We actually gave them a direct link to Aries. It's actually quite a bit faster than the core system. The core system, we had to kind of regularly punch them data, and it was once a year for big amounts of data, and once a quarter or so for other smaller pieces of data. This one actually hooks into Aries and pulls data nightly. So it's going to give us direct access to every little bit of information we could possibly want.
Do teachers and staff and admin need to get trained on this?
Of course, yes. There's a huge training regimen that we're going to go through. Initially, we'll be training our core staff here, then we'll move out to our administrators, and then we'll have some additional training available for
So
teachers.
when do you see that it will be provide valuable information to our teachers, our schools, you?
When will everyone have access to it? I mean, I would guess that everyone will have access to it probably November. Realistically, we're looking at moving pretty fast once we get the thing actually lit up and get people.
And at some point, I know that Mr. Lawrence and I have another data session Monday morning where we're going to be talking about math. But and then either the next board meeting or the one after that will bring you CASP and math data. So at some point, it would be great once PowerSchool is sort of up or whatever to show the board what PowerSchool is capable and how that will benefit, ultimately benefit our students, benefit our teachers and schools and all that. This was an excellent presentation. A lot of depth, a lot of great info. Interesting that we will be administering it 3 times a year. Hopefully that, we will glean great information, and so I just have to thank you. Any other questions on this?
I think I would just share that, like, if I was perhaps not sitting in the data meeting, I would feel like this, boy, is there more? And the answer is yes. We went through reams of every school site and looked at the numbers. So the goal was to bring, I think, a macro view of this, because we spent over 2 hours just picking apart this one survey and going in deep. And I really appreciate the fact that you're very, you knew the data, but I also, as a board member, appreciate when you don't know the answer and you say you're going to find out and don't make it up. So I appreciated that as well, because I think there are some things like us trying to get to the bottom of what's the causality here, which there's no expectation that you're going to have that in the first round of this, so we're going to keep discovering it. So there's just an inordinate amount of data that we're going through, and I appreciate the time and energy of everybody in it.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you. You did a great, this was your first real presentation to the board, and just terrific. Thank you, thank you.
You can come back tomorrow.
Ms. Westerberg.
Okay, will the Google Forms, and I always butcher this word, so I'm sorry, still be anonymous?
No, that's good.
I don't know how to say anonymous.
Anonymous? Okay, yes.
Will it still be, or will it be recorded like names?
I'm glad you asked that question. So the Core Rally survey that you would have taken last year in the fall and the spring is not anonymous. So when we administer this survey in the fall and the winter, it will not be anonymous. In the spring, it is anonymous. Do you have thoughts about that?
I think that it should be like told to the students that it will be recorded. That's all. I just think to be transparent with it, but I don't disagree with it.
with high school students. It is one of those pieces where, especially with the suicidal ideation or being able to identify, for instance, in the 9th grade class, students who are struggling and feel uncared for, administering it 2 times a year where we can get down to a subgroup and say, oh, these 12 students, I want to provide them with support. And then in the spring, it's extracted for the state, and it's the state reporting anonymous. But you feel it's something that with high school students, we should note that it's not confidential.
The students, do they know that when they take the test?
They've known it with the core rally administration, and I think it's important to continue to let them know that.
It's important to keep in mind that the core rally was also a Google form. So this is not going to look any different than what they're already used to. And also at the very top of the Google form, when you actually go to fill it out, it says right there, your email address is this and it is being recorded.
Okay, so they
So
know.
it's pretty clear, yeah, that it's actually being recorded.
I think part of there's a reason why we're shifting this, but I don't think we've discussed really here yet today, and that is we are unable to really match the data at any type of micro level. We can't even look at the classroom level or find cohorts. Is it socioeconomic level students are performing lower? Is it a certain minority or ethnic group that's performing lower? Is it, so because we don't write, I'm looking over here, that's a big challenge of the way the data currently works, is that we just get a real kind of macro blueprint of each campus. And so the data is interesting, but it's not really actionable. We can't laser in and say, here's a challenge we need to fix right away. So that's was the need to move. But we did discuss in committee the very good point that you're making, which is, are you more likely to be honest about your feelings about suicide or sadness if you know it's 100% confidential? Which is why we're still going to have the A and B testing. We're gonna have one that's not 100% confidential so that we can engage upon it. What am I saying? Anonymous, correct? Anonymous. And one that isn't, so we can see if we start to see huge swings in the data, if students are not being as transparent.
I agree with that. I think that once students know that their emails will be recorded and the person who's taking it knows, I think you'll see maybe even people like choosing not to take it or lying, because you see that with students not wanting to reach out and get help. So I just think that it'll be good to have both tests, because then you get both sets of data.
Thank you for that great insight. Any other comments? No? Hearing none, we're going to adjourn the meeting. Good night, everyone, and thank you.